What's up, Podcasting Nation? It is Friday afternoon and I've just run to the office again and it is raining. And no, I am not a Hull City fan. I took my lad to watch Hull City and it was cold, so I bought it. Anyway, you're not here for that. You're here for yesterday's information. How did we do? Well, do you know what? I think it was a good day for podcasting, a good day for my podcast. We got some great replies on Facebook, some great messages. And I even got one of the school mums who actually got in touch as well. My kid goes to school, and one of the school mums who I haven't talked to before actually got in contact with me, which is pretty cool. I love things like that. And said, I'm going to make today my bitch. And I was like, yeah! Right, okay, so how did we go about yesterday? Well, as you can see, we didn't hit the magic 400, but however, we did. And I'll tell you something else as well, which was amazing, great win for me as well. We didn't hit the magic 400, but what we did, however, was we got to 398, and in that, we hit a daily high of 192. So even on our best day, 628, we never got anywhere near 192. So that has to be a real good pointer for the future of this podcast. So I'm really happy with that. 192 there, 3120, and we had nearly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We had 90 people, 90 different podcasts was listened to yesterday, which was brilliant. So all points in the right direction. I'm happy with that. I don't mind that it wasn't quite the 400. The great pointers, the key performing indicators that I look for is one, how did my show do that day? How many downloads did my show get on that first day? And 192, I can't argue with that. It's going in the right direction. We need to get to that 200 and we need to keep above it. And once we're there, then we're going to stay there. So what the idea is now, I always think about podcasting as your bucket. This is getting my bucket correct at the minute and making sure that my bucket has no holes in it. Because if there's no point me pouring water in, the pouring the water is the paid audience. There's no point pouring the water. There I am pouring it. There's no point pouring the water in if I've got holes in it. So it's all about making sure my podcast is perfect and making sure that I am blocking up any of those holes. So when we do get paid customers in to the bucket, to the podcast, then they don't seep out, they stay there, and we can just keep adding water and water and water and water, and we get a good retention rate, because that's what it's all about, is the retention rate. Another thing that I want to talk about today, I just forgotten it. There was two things. God damn it, there was two things. I should come prepared, shouldn't I? I know one thing. What's the other thing though? Anyway, I'll tell you the other thing. So one of my mentors, Dan Bradbury, hey Dan, he actually got in contact with me and said, Dean, I want to make my podcast the #1 podcast in the UK for business. And Dan's an author, I'm in his private mastermind, and he has some amazing content. So I was like, yesterday, I was like, whoa. And so I took it upon myself. And obviously, I've read literally every single book on podcasting now. I don't think there is another book that I can't read on podcasting. I've listened to every single podcasting expert. I've paid over £5,000 to be in podcasting courses. I don't think there's a lot that I don't know about podcasting at the minute. And hopefully, this will be a way of testing it. As podcasting.co.uk would motivate me. And so what we're going to do is I basically I did a little presentation, keynote presentation for Dan. Never done one. I've never personally done a keynote presentation before in terms of I've actually organise it and put the writing in myself. What I do is when I give in keynotes for self-storage and other things, what I normally do is I normally send it across to my virtual assistant and whoever it may be. Oh yeah, I remembered what it was. VA for editing. Right, I'll tell you about the editing part in a minute. I wrote it down so I don't forget. Right, so what I've done for Dan is I did this keynote presentation, and like I said, I don't normally do and input the keynote. I thought, how hard can a keynote be to actually to organise and do? And I thought, well, I'm not normally very good at this sort of thing, but I'll just write down a few things and I can talk about it. 2 hours later, 2 hours it took me to do a bloody keynote for this Dan Bradbury. For this Dan Bradbury. I love Dan, by the way. I think he's absolutely, his stuff is golden. Just, I think he's thinking about changing the name of a podcast, but if you want to check it out, it's called, at the minute it's called Dan Bradbury, but it's going to be called Turnover is Vanity and Profit is Sanity, just after his book, his best-selling book. It's brilliant. His stuff is Breeding Gazelles is his first book, and that's how I first came into him, because I read the book and I was like, oh, this guy's amazing. Anyway, so I did this keynote for him, and I came up with some good concepts, good ideas, and he emailed me this morning saying, I'm blown away, it's amazing, like, I can't wait to implement all this stuff. And it was only an overview of what we can do, especially with Dan's audience. I mean, bloody hell, if we can't get him to number 1 in the UK, knock that Rob Moore off his perch, the disruptive entrepreneur, by the way, I love Rob Moore's stuff as well, I listen to it all, then there's something wrong. So yeah, so we're working with loads of different things and loads of different angles and putting it all together and making sure that we push Dan Bradbury's for a relaunch for his podcast. Profit is Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity. So that will be the podcast name, I'm sure of it, by time, it's a couple of weeks' time, I'm sure. Another thing I want to talk to you about is editing. So I was always under the impression that you know what? I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Oh no, it's bright outside. Don't want to look at the brightness. Right. So I was always under the impression that you don't need to edit. That you shouldn't edit because it's authentic and stuff. And then I listened to somebody one of his podcasting courses. I didn't agree with a lot of what he said in the book, but this really rang true. He said, "Well, hang about. If you want to positively impact people and have a greatest impact and effect on people, then surely you just want to polish what you say up a little bit to make sure it has that impact." And when he said it, I was like, that could be a good point, actually, because I know one of my faults is that I go round and round and round the houses sometimes when I say like 100 words where 10 words will do, or 10 words is good enough. And so it was interesting. So I had a debate with myself thinking, okay, what do I do? What do I do? How do I do this? And I decided that, yes, do you know what? Let's clean it up a little bit. And it's still going to be authentic. It's still going to have the ers and ers and ers. It's just going to make the sound that bit crispy. It's still going to have in me go blah, 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 and going off on a tangent and all that sort of stuff. But it's just cleaning up the areas where I make mistakes and trying to be as professional as possible, but not being polished. Because I don't, you know me. Look at me. I'm doing a podcast with my hat on, just been for a run. The one thing, checking the time. The one thing I'm not is I'm not professional. I am not corporate in any way, shape or format. In fact, I really dislike those corporate events. You'll very, very rarely see me in a shirt and tie. I think for the wedding, last time I went for a wedding, I wore shorts. So you're very, very, you'll rarely ever see me in a shirt and tie ever. I can't remember last time I actually wore a shirt and tie. So I don't want to be polished, that polished person. However, I do want to give the best experience I can possibly do out there. And because we are doing videos now as well, I had to get a video editor. So I've just employed somebody on $10,000 a year to do my videos and to do my podcasts. And you know what? It's an investment. And I know a lot of people are thinking, well, Dean, I can't afford that. You don't need to do it. Remember, I got the betting guide to over 750,000 downloads with no editing whatsoever. I used to cough. And by the way, I'm still leaving coughs. I used to cough and leave them in. I used to, screwed this bit up. And I cut. If you ever listen to the betting guide, you'll often hear me say that. And that's just where I screw up and I've got to start again. And I left that in. So please, and by the way, we was over 6 figures on that podcast. We drove that podcast to over 6 figures in revenue from the podcast, just from the podcast sponsorship. And we brought out a bit of software with 0 ad spend. This is how powerful podcasting can be. So please don't think that you need to edit at all, because I didn't start editing until I'm nearly 1 million downloads. I did no editing whatsoever. And it's only now that I've decided to get an editor on board. And obviously with podcasting.co.uk, what I want to do is make sure that I am open and honest with you guys and show you behind the curtains of exactly what we're doing, what works and what doesn't. And you know what? I might go back to no editing, but what I've got to do for this channel is I have to test things. If I don't test things, then how will we know what's going to work and what's not? So that's why I'm testing an editor to make sure that it might sound better, and it might make a difference to downloads. It might not. People might not give a shit. People might not give a Scooby-Doo. But that's where I'm going to test for you guys to let you know what works and what doesn't along this crazy journey. And I love it. This is one of my favourite parts of the day, is coming on the microphone for 2 minutes, #2 minutes, 10 minutes, and talking about this sort of thing. So I'm really, really excited. Check out Dan Bradbury's podcast as well. Give him a rating and a review, because those reviews matter massively. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in. I massively appreciate you guys. I know that when I'm recording this, the podcast still, the the website still isn't live, and I've been having so many people message me and asking me when it's coming live. So I do appreciate you guys. You guys, my friends, you absolutely rock. Keep rocking that mic. And if you've got any questions, please let me know in the comment section below, and I will endeavour to answer those for you. Okay, guys, girls, this is DMB tuning off. I will still speak to you tomorrow, even though it's a weekend. And I'm always a little bit anxious of a weekend because we tend not to get as many downloads, so we'll see. Okay, let's do the thing that we normally do. 22512. Hey! Do. We've had 4 downloads while I've been talking in 10 minutes. Excellente. So that means today so far we've had 226 and it is 133. All right, my friends, speak to you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Dean signing off.